What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a pretty cool Monday. Bunch of Garfields out here. But as you can tell from the title of this video, we're going to continue to think and talk and open up a discussion about Madden 21 as we sit and wait most likely for EA Play in June to get more information about what we're going to get here in Madden 21. But like we've talked about, the X Factors before on the channel. We've talked about the 99 Club. We've talked about small fixes. This is another open-ended discussion that I think is kind of important to think about. And I thought about it on my Twitter. I opened up with you guys. If you're not following me on Twitter, at PapaXC4. I was like, who in the hell is going to be my Madden 21 franchise team? Because unless they do a complete overhaul and add some new relocation teams, which, let's be completely honest, my expectations are slim to none that is going to happen. Unfortunately, I'm most likely going to have to pick a team. Just use a base roster as my focus, my key launch day Madden 21 franchise that we post content with on YouTube. In years past, in Madden 20, we did the Raiders, which you guys really didn't like and enjoy that series. Some of my best content. My Raiders franchise this year honestly did better than my rebuilds for some reason. And then we went to the Bucks. And in years past, we've used the Buffalo Bills and relocated them to Toronto. We've used the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I've used the Eagles a whole lot of times on this channel. So I didn't want to redo any of the teams that I've previously done. So unfortunately, that meant Philly, Jacksonville, Buffalo, Raiders, and Bucks were out the board because those are teams we've done a lot of content with on the channel. Remember, obviously we used to only do Eagles franchises, and then we did our first relocation. It might have actually been Toronto as well with the Jacksonville Jaguars. AR-15, Allen Robinson was the GOAT in that series. And then we did Toronto Huskies. Everyone remembers that. The Bills, Jordan Poyer, all that stuff. Josh Allen, the trades. And then we obviously did the Raiders with Derek Carr, Antonio Brown. And then we retired John Gruden and took him back to Tampa Bay, where he obviously was a Super Bowl winning head coach. So me thinking about what team I should rebuild here, there's a lot of good teams in Madden 21. Maybe definitely more than there was in Madden 20 that legitimately make very interesting contenders for who's the top team that everyone's going to want to hop in with their franchise mode. So I'm going to rank just 10. This is in no order. We're going alphabetical because I don't want to weigh certain teams some way so people guess what my team's going to be in Madden 21, because obviously there's a little bit of surprise about who I eventually do pick. So here are my 10 teams alphabetically, who I think should be in your consideration and who kind of been in my consideration for the ideal day one starting rebuild team in franchise mode. And we're going to start right here with the Chicago Bears at number 10. This is a team that, how do you want to view a rebuild? If you want to view a rebuild, first and foremost about the quarterback position, there's a lot of not stability here. Nick Foles, you got Trubisky, who's most likely you're going to ditch him, even though he's a fun Madden quarterback. Completely honest with you, if you're, the accuracy, if you can get around that, he's a good athlete. But ultimately, you need a quarterback here for the Bears. They're a team that has a rich history, so you're going to something like that. They have fun players. Tariq Cohen's always going to be fun. Allen Robinson's an absolute beast on the outside. You can get weird with Cordero Patterson moving a running back if you really want to. The offensive line, you have some good young pieces on this team that you're not going to have to worry about drafting. Eddie Jackson is going to be absolute money at safety. You're going to have him for pretty much the whole rebuild. Roquan Smith, another guy, going to be an absolute beast, got his best years ahead of him. Cohen, James Daniels on the interior of that offensive line. Anthony Miller, David Montgomery. There's really nice players in place. You got to get a quarterback, but you also get the added benefit that there are established players on this roster. Khalil Mack most likely is going to be a superstar X Factor. So, I can tell you firsthand, in Madden 20, when I was the Raiders in the early days, not having X Factors was kind of annoying. It kind of hindered my experience. It wasn't as fun because you would see, the Joey Bosa's and the Derwin James of the world just take games over, and you're like, wow, I don't have any X Factors because I kind of took a cupcake roster. So to avoid doing that, a team like the Bears that you're probably going to get an X Factor or two in Khalil Mack, you got Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller. These guys are going to have abilities that if you don't want that, you don't have that in your head, I want to build and grow my own X Factors. You kind of want at least a couple starting pieces to make your life easier. I think the Chicago Bears are a great candidate. Team number 2, we're just going down. We'll go in order. Number 9 is the Cincinnati Bengals. They got Joe Burrow. They are a rebuild team in every sense of the word, but you have your shiny new options. So if you're not particularly a great drafter, if you do not want to take the task of drafting your new franchise quarterback, go with the unknown of Joe Burrow. The expectations are there that he's going to be phenomenal. He's going to be pretty fun to play in Madden for sure. But, there you go. If you have your starting quarterback, you still have the unknown about, are you going to be able to develop him? Is he going to be good? But at least you don't have to, especially if you're not particularly great at drafting, burn a couple first-round picks if you're going to a team that absolutely needs a brand new starter, and you whiff in your Madden draft. You get a bunch of 60 overall quarterbacks. You have at least a nice young option here in Joe Burrow, and the team around him is pretty solid. Joe Mixon is an absolute beast. AJ Green, veteran. Atkins, veteran. So these are guys that will be good for the short term, but long term, you're going to have to find the replacements, which is always a big appeal for me when I'm going to franchises. Like, yeah, what can I use for you right now? But ultimately, are you going to be more valuable for me to trade away and then find a replacement? That is one of the funner things that you can do in franchise. You throw in the fact they got DJ Reader coming over in free agency. You got Tyler Boyd, Carl Lawson, Jesse Bates. They just got a couple new corners in there from the Minnesota Vikings. Generally, it's a really solid young roster. You get the OP-ness of John Ross, and you got some veteran. It's just a good middle-of-the-park, interesting roster. And then you throw in Joe Burrow to the mix. I definitely think Cincinnati is a top 10 franchise list team in Madden 21. Going to team number 8, we're just going to go down a couple more spots here to the Denver Broncos. I think very similarly to the Cincinnati Bengals, you have your young quarterback here in Drew Lock, who's going to be pretty overpowered from like a height, weight, speed standpoint, has a great arm, and it eliminates the drafting of a quarterback, which I know for a lot of people, drafting a quarterback is exciting, but there are that segment of people that just don't want to deal with the having to make sure you can, draft a quarterback, knowing all the ins and outs, knowing how to select a money pick. Some people aren't appealed by that. Some people just like doing the honest approach of scouting and seeing what happens. So if that's kind of your approach and you don't really want to draft a quarterback, much like Cincy, Denver is going to be your team. Because outside of that, they got brand new two-headed running back attack with Lindsey and Melvin Gordon. At wide receiver, you have Sutton, who's 24, probably going to pull in a superstar to have Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler from a wide receiver core. It doesn't get any better than that, especially for youth. You throw in Noah Fant, who you have an overpowered right out the gate tight end, height, weight, speed mismatch. You still got some veterans in Von Miller in the secondary too. Kareem Jackson, AJ Boye. They got Jarrell Casey. The offensive line needs some work. So it's another good mix of veterans. You got Justin Simmons, who might be able to cop himself as another superstar X factor. You might have that added benefit. I think it's definitely a very fun roster. For me, they're just a little too overpowered for me to consider them as my Madden 21 franchise, but I definitely think they're going to be an interesting team, and enough so that they come in at number 8 on my Madden 21 franchises. Going to number 7, we're going to go right down here to the Miami Dolphins, the team with 3 first-round picks, Tua Tagovailoa, Austin Jackson, and Noah Igbinoghene. You got to develop them. I think 2 of those guys, especially in Austin Jackson and Igbinoghene, are not going to get terrific base overalls because they were kind of surprise first-round selections. But much like Joe Burrow, much like Drew Lock, you have your franchise. Being able to play with Tua Tagovailoa, and especially when you look at the rest of the team here from Miami, a lot bigger rebuild than considered. The only reason why they're not higher is because they start with Tua Tagovailoa. Most likely, you have your franchise quarterback in place. But outside of that, this team needs work. You're going to have a nice, fun running back tandem. Howard as your short yardage back. Breida for your speedster. Wide receiver, Devontae Parker's pretty solid. Preston Williams is solid. Jakeem Grant is an OP guy, like a mini John Ross. But ultimately, you're going to, these guys are getting up there in age. You're getting to the back end of their career. This is a team that needs a lot of work. Mike Gesicki, a low-key, underrated, overpowered tight end for his size and for his speed. But the offensive line, you're going to need a complete rebuild on the O-line for the most part, right? You got some ugly contracts there. Defensively, probably going to need a complete rebuild for the most part. Wilkins is not going to start with a great dev trait. There's not a lot of good dev traits generally on this defense. And then you got the back end, you're going to be set. Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, but in the same sentence, in the same mindset, these guys are very expensive. You're not going to have a free-for-all with your salary cap here with the Miami Dolphins because they have, especially this last free agency, getting the Van Noys and the Lawsons and Byron Jones. They spent a lot of that. So your salary cap is going to be a little bit more difficult to navigate. So I think all in all, a very fun Madden 21 team to consider here in the Miami Dolphins. Going to team number 6, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, this is not really in order. We're just going alphabetical. I think the Jags are obviously a really, really fun team. The open-ended question about quarterback, you most likely are going to have to draft one. If not, Minshew Mania can run wild. So it's fun from that standpoint at the quarterback spot. You have Leonard Fournette entering his final contract. If he's not there, woof, the rest of the running backs don't look particularly great, which looks good for a rebuild. At wide receiver, DJ Chark's OP, 6'4", really, really fast. Dede Westbrook's pretty fast. Chris Conley's pretty OP. You got Laviska Shenault. Have fun with that. You can pretty much make him Cordero Patterson 2.0. I imagine he'll be one of those guys that if you move to running back, his rating's going to shoot way up. You got to find your tight end. Your offensive line, still very much a work in progress. It's expensive, so you might have to make some salary cap decisions there. On the defensive side, Josh Allen is going to be a really, really fun user. Caleb Von Chasson, a really, really fun user. You have Yannick Ngakoue. If you want to keep it realistic, you might have a really, really good trade piece right away for year one of your franchise, or you could keep him and then move Chasson to outside linebacker if you want to do something like that. But then it's a defense that you throw in a Miles Jack who's OP, but you throw in the secondary that needs a complete rebuild. You got C.J. Henderson, the top 10 pick out of Florida, but other than that, fill your boots in rebuilding 90% of this Jacksonville Jaguars team. So definitely a very appealing team for Madden 21 if you are looking for more so a rebuild team for your main franchise. We have the Jets at number 5, another really, really interesting team. You're going to get most likely a superstar X Factor in Jamal Adams, who's very overpowered. You have guys like Le'Veon Bell, C.J. Mosley, Desir, their best players. But look at the common thing here. Look at the age of their top players. Outside of Jamal Adams, all these guys are going to be 28, 29, almost around 30. That's about the expiry date, if you will, in Madden franchise mode. So from a rebuild standpoint, their best players are kind of up there in age. And then you have the question, is Sam Darnold going to be a franchise quarterback? Figuring that out. I'll tell you right now, Jets are a top 3 shortlist team for me for my Madden 21 franchise. I honestly have no idea who I'm going to pick as my team, but the Jets are very much on that shortlist. Wide receiver, you got Perriman for height, weight, speed. They got my boy Denzel Mims here for height, weight, speed. It's going to be a pretty fun team from that standpoint. Offensive line, Mekhi Becton's interesting, but the rest of the O-line definitely needs a lot of work. Defensively, I don't like the fact they're in a 3-4. That kind of goes against them. That's one of the bigger negatives because I don't want to immediately come in and just change a team from start to bottom, but I hate 3-4 defenses. But you do have Quinnen Williams, who's a monster and should develop into obviously a 90 overall player in a couple seasons. The linebacking core is solid, even though they're up there in age a little bit. Blake Cashman's a very fun user linebacker. The secondary, work in progress for sure. A couple young guys here in Austin and Quincy Wilson. The safety pair, obviously, you get Adams, who's at X Factor. So, again, kind of like we're talking about the Chicago Bears. This is a team that's, maybe a little bit more stable at quarterback. You can try to grow and develop Sam Darnold, but the questions are there. But ultimately, when you look at the Jets roster, they're pretty old. They're on the cusp of rebuild. While you still get your best young player is most likely going to carry an X-Factor ability if you want that little bit of OP-ness for your starting roster. The Jets, definitely for me, are in consideration the top 3 list for my own Madden 21 franchise, and I think you guys should consider them as well. We have the Detroit Lions as team number, we're at 5. I think it's 5, 6, something like that. Either way, I can't count. I think Detroit's a very fun team, and much like the Jets, they're in my short list for one of my 3 teams that I am gonna have to figure out who's the best option for my Madden franchise. I think with the Detroit Lions, you have a quarterback situation where you have a guy in Stafford that you can play for the time being, but you most likely are going to want to draft his replacement sooner than later. It doesn't have to be a Trevor Lawrence, a Justin Fields, a Trey Lance in the first opportunity, your 2021 draft, but within the first 2-3 years, you definitely are going to want to bring in a young quarterback to pair with Matt Stafford. And while you have Stafford, at least you got the cannon arm, right? Might be 32, 33, 34, depending on how long you want to have him on your franchise. But I definitely think he's still a very viable quarterback, and he's great for the deep ball. Running back, you have Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Bo Scarborough, 3 very interesting running backs. And you got Jason Huntley out of New Mexico, even though it's wrong there. But I think he's going to be a really overpowered receiving back. So I think the running backs are really fun. Wide receiver, Kenny Galladay, a beast, absolute powerhouse. And then outside of that, though, you're going to have to rebuild this wide receiver core. Marvin Jones is old. Amendola is pretty old. There's not a lot. Cephas, you could probably throw him in the slot. I don't know why all the schools are kind of wrong here, but I think Galladay, great option, and might have a chance to be an X Factor, which is sick. When I look at my Raiders franchise, it was the most fun when I was just letting Antonio Brown be an X Factor, all over everybody's faces, and that's what you get with Kenny Galladay. The tight end, you get Hawkinson, who's going to be a monster. Offensive line is not horrible. Ragnall's going to be solid. Decker's fairly solid. They paid outrageous money for Big V. So what better another aspect of a rebuild than having some ugly contracts to manage? And they definitely get that in Big V. Defense, you got some nice young players. Deshaun Hand, Trey Flowers on a mega deal. You got Danny Shelton inside. Jamie Collins. The linebacking core is kind of still a mixed bag. Maybe in the inside, you could develop Tavai and Davis as your guys. Obviously, Gator bias. If I did do the lines, I would like to try to rejuvenate his career just a little bit. But the linebacking core needs complete overhauling. The secondary, you're going to be just trying to replace Darius Slay. Coleman, 27, Trufant, kind of old. Obviously, Okuda is going to be the big fish on the back end and should develop into the next mega superstar in franchise secondary. So that's really good. That's another big positive. Oruwariye, there's some good youth guys. Michael Jackson, sorry, that's cringy, but there's some young guys here, but Okuda's definitely the creme de la creme. At safety, Tracy Walker's solid. So it is a very interesting team, and absolutely the appeal of they've never won a Super Bowl, the appeal that you need a new quarterback, the appeal that a lot of their best players are getting up there in age just a little bit. I definitely think the Detroit Lions are going to be one of the better franchises to use, and one of the 3 teams, along with the Jets so far, on my personal Madden 21 shortlist. We have next up the Carolina Panthers, the final team on my personal shortlist. Yeah, man, they're going through a rebuild. They pretty much got a brand new head coach. The Cam Newton era is over. So they're going with Teddy Bridgewater. And personally, I'm going to view Teddy Bridgewater, if we're talking about Big V, as a bad contract to navigate on the Detroit Lions. I think that's what you get in Teddy Bridgewater. You have a massive contract for, it's short, but, Teddy's most likely not going to be your guy. And if he is your guy, there's another appeal. Can you turn Teddy Bridgewater's career? Can you make him that really hyped quarterback coming out of Louisville? So there is a lot of appeal over the long term, getting a new replacement, getting a new franchise quarterback, or you could turn the tide and have Teddy Bridgewater for the next couple of years emerge as your long-term starter. You also get the XFL MVP in PJ Walker. You got Will Grier. There's some interesting quarterback options here for the Carolina Panthers. At running back, you get the best running back in the game. That could be the negative. Maybe you don't want to start with a guy that's as overpowered as Christian McCaffrey out of the gate. Personally, I've thought about that, but on the other hand, Christian McCaffrey is one of my favorite players in the NFL, and I would love to have him right away. You look at the wide receiver core, very, very cheesy. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel. It's going to be like mini pink slips if I pick them, which is good and bad for sure. But it's a really fun wide receiver core. Need to find your tight end replacement for Greg Olsen. Offensive line is definitely a work in progress. There's some good young guys with some upside. Greg Little, Dennis Daly. You got Taylor Moton as well. But for the most part, that offensive line definitely needs some work, which is good. That's something that's pretty fun to address and try to build through the draft. The defensive line, you got some good young players. Gross Matos at Penn State. You got Brian Burns, absolute monster. He's going to be a guy that develops right away to be a franchise edge rusher. But the inside, you got Derek Brown and K'Wan Short, a good mix of young and old. I think the defensive line is going to be pretty solid. The linebacking core, Shaq Thompson, fun user linebacker. The rest of the linebacking core needs work. That's where you're going to be able to rebuild. Try to replace Luke Kuechly. That's another storyline. You got to try to replace just everyone on the Panthers. Try to replace the old guard is an appeal of selecting the Panthers at your 21. Trying to replace Cam Newton. Trying to replace Greg Olsen. Trying to replace Luke Kuechly. It's an appeal for sure. In the secondary, you got Dante Jackson. Big-time speedster. But outside of that, absolutely need to completely overhaul the secondary here for the Carolina Panthers. There's not a whole lot there. Outside of probably Jeremy Chin, who they got in the 3rd round. He's going to be overpowered from a height, weight, speed standpoint because he dominated the combine. But other than that, you need a free safety. You need to build up the corner room. So there is definitely enough rebuildability with a mix of really exciting and pretty fun players here for the Carolina Panthers. So they are absolutely, along with the Jets and the Lions, it's going to be one of those 3 for who you're going to see on this channel in Madden 21 as my main franchise. And for your personal franchises, you definitely should consider the Carolina Panthers as well. We have our final 2 teams, and one of the number 2 is the Patriots. And ultimately, it's replacing Tom Brady. This is an obvious selection if you're all about that storyline of just taking on the team replacing Tom Brady. Because outside of that, it's pretty good. It's an old roster for sure, but the talent is going to be there. The start now talent is going to be everything except the quarterback spot. We don't need to go through and break down the roster. Everyone knows they're older guys. Edelman, Jason McCourty, Hightower, all they're in their 30s. Gilmore, reigning defensive player of the year. He's still going to be 29, 30 years old. So it is an old roster, and just replacing Tom Brady, you can't not mention that when you're talking about Madden 21 teams here. And the final one is going to be the Washington Redskins. I think the Redskins are also a pretty interesting team. New change of the guard there with Ron Rivera. You have big questions at quarterback. Is Dwayne Haskins going to be a franchise starter? You could potentially, if you really wanted to, just get out in fantasy world, have a redemption story for Alex Smith. But ultimately, it's going to be about Dwayne Haskins. Are you going to be able to develop into a franchise quarterback, or do you want to wait and see? Do you draft the guy immediately? Do you try to trade him for value? That's a very interesting storyline there for the Washington Redskins. You also own the fact that they might have got the most overpowered player on the defensive side of the ball in the draft. You got Montez Sweat, who's just super cheesy. Then you throw in Chase Young, right? You got some good pieces on the defense across the board. Reuben Foster, got some young guys there in the secondary. Landon Collins is still really, really good. Offensive line is well built for the most part. Striff's going to be solid for you. Roullier's solid. You got to replace the big ticket, Trent Williams, on the offensive line. So rebuilding the O-line, finding a brand new tight end. The Jordan Reed era is over. Is it going to be Thaddeus Moss? Is he a guy, the UDFA, that you turn into the next Randy Moss? You got Scary Terry, who's unbelievably overpowered. Height, weight, speed, going to be really, really fun to use. At running back, you got Geis. You got the mix of young and old. Darius Geis and Bryce Love, and you throw in an AP there. You got the OP-ness of Antonio Gibson, who's going to be really, really fun to use. I think they're a really interesting roster. And it's unfortunate that I'm an Eagle fan because that top 3 would have been a top 4, and I would have included the Washington Redskins. But we've also have kind of used the Redskins before on the channel when we did the replacements. So in a way, I don't know, we've kind of used them before, but they're definitely a team that you need to consider for your Madden 21 franchise. So there you go, guys. Those are my top 10. Obviously, there's some other teams in between that could be interesting. I had to shorten the list a little bit. I think obviously Arizona could be a fun team. Atlanta could be a fun team. Just to name a few. Giants. And any team that there's questions at quarterback are always a prime candidate. But those are my Big 10. Bears, Bengals, Broncos, Dolphins, Jags, Jets, Lions, Panthers, Patriots, and Redskins. So let me know who you're going to be picking in Madden 21. Let me know out of my top 3. The Jets, Lions, and Panthers. What team do you want to see me rebuild the most and use as my main franchise in Madden 21? Let me know in the comment section below. That does it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.